Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has accused Israel of trying to provoke a war by planning attacks on US forces in Iraq. In a tweet, Zarif advised US President Donald Trump to be careful of the trap and warned that any aggression will backfire badly. Pakistan has asked the United Nations to press India to drop fabricated charges against Kashmiri rights activist Asya Andarabi. Pakistan's envoy Munir Akram made the call in identical letters to the UN diplomat on sexual violence in conflict and the executive director of the UN Women. Andarabi, who risks conviction by a sham court on the 18th of January, is the founder of a Kashmiri rights group, Daughters of the Nation. In Syria, a car bomb exploded at a vegetable market in the northeastern town of Ras Al Ain, with reports of several killed and wounded. The state media said 2 children were among those killed and their mother was wounded. It said several Turkish-backed fighters were also killed in the explosion. In Yemen, 5 women have been killed when a projectile exploded at a wedding ceremony in the port city of Hodeidah. The government and Houthi militia blame each other for the Friday night bombing near Hodeidah's airport. It comes just 2 days after at least 26 people were killed in the blast that rocked the Aden airport. The global number of coronavirus cases has surpassed 84 million, while the virus has claimed more than 1.82 million lives. The COVID-19 infections tally in the US has crossed 20 million with over 347,000 deaths. Brazil's death tally has surpassed 195,000, while its infections tally has exceeded 7.7 million. Pakistan has reported over 2,100 new cases and 82 fatalities overnight, with its death toll crossing 10,200. And in cricket, Pakistan's skipper Babar Azam has been ruled out of the second test against New Zealand after failing to recover from a right thumb fracture. The Green Shirts are determined to make a strong comeback in the final test starting on Sunday. The hosts are leading the series 1-0. Those were the headlines and detailed stories right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Iran's Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has accused Israel of trying to provoke a war by planning attacks on the US forces in Iraq. In a tweet, he advised US President Donald Trump to be careful of the trap and warned that any aggression will backfire badly. His remarks come ahead of the first anniversary of the US killing of top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani in a drone strike in Baghdad. In the wake of the 3rd of January attack, Iran responded by launching a volley of missiles at Iraqi bases housing US and other coalition troops. Since then, tensions have remained at a fever pitch, with both the sides warning each other against further attacks. Last week, US President Donald Trump said he will hold Iran responsible for any fatal attack on Americans in Iraq. Iran's foreign minister was equal to the task as he accused the outgoing US president of attempting to fabricate a pretext for war. Tensions with Iran further escalated with the killing in November of Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, an Iranian nuclear scientist. Tehran has blamed Israel for the killing, but the US officials are concerned that any Iranian retaliation could hit American interests. Pakistan has asked the United Nations to press India to drop fabricated charges against Kashmiri rights activist Asia Andarabi. Pakistan's envoy Munir Akram made the call in identical letters to the UN diplomat on sexual violence in conflict and the executive director of the UN Women. Friday's letters were in addition to one dispatched to the UN Secretary General a day earlier, in which he urged Guterres to ask India to provide Andarabi complete legal protections. He warned that there is an imminent and real threat to the life of Andarabi and her associates. Andarabi, who risks conviction by a sham court on the 18th of January, is the founder of Kashmiri rights group Daughters of the Nation. She has been languishing in Indian custody since 2016. For more on this, we are joined by Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, Munir Akram. Mr. Akram, thank you very much for your time at Indus News. First of all, what role can the United Nations play to prevent the judicial murder of Kashmiri rights activist Asia Andarabi?
Well, the United Nations, first of all, has a moral responsibility to defend human rights and also to defend human rights defenders. This is a major plank of the United Nations, that people who are working for human rights ought to have special defense and special treatment in case they are persecuted. So that is the context in which we have written to the Secretary General. We've written to the head of the UN Women's Organization, as well as to the Special Rapporteur, who deals with the issue of sexual violence, because in this case also the persecution of women constitutes violence against women, and we have therefore approached them as well. And likewise, we will be approaching human rights organizations in Geneva through our mission in Geneva. So this is an effort to defend and protect Asia Andarabi and her associates from the possibility of penalties that could include the ultimate adjudication of threat to her life and that of her associates. So that was the urgency, and that is why we have approached the United Nations.
Mr. Akram, when we talk about the possibilities, can the timely intervention of the United Nations in the controversial trial of Ms. Andarabi help break the vicious cycle of human rights violations in occupied Kashmir?
Well, we do hope that if the United Nations continues to intervene with the Indian government, that the Indian government will take heed and stop its atrocities and violations of human rights in Kashmir. Obviously, this is the United Nations by itself cannot do it. It's the international community, it's the major powers, it is the whole human rights community which has to mobilize against India's violations of human rights. Many special rapporteurs have spoken out. The High Commissioner for Human Rights has spoken out. The Secretary General has spoken about the need to protect human rights. But the Indian government, this Indian government, has been impervious to international criticism, to international opinion, and therefore we have to continue with our campaign, with our efforts to project the violations of human rights in Indian-occupied Kashmir.
So, Mr. Akram, is there any legal mechanism at the UN when it comes specifically to such sham judicial proceedings?
Well, I think in the United Nations, as you know, United Nations processes are mostly political and moral. The United Nations, apart from the Security Council, does not have an enforcement mechanism. The only way that you can get legally enforceable decisions is through the UN Security Council. And in the UN Security Council, there are powers which have the power of veto, and that is the impediment to get a decision against India.
Thank you, Mr. Munir Akram, Pakistan's permanent representative to the United Nations, for talking to Indus News. We really appreciate that. Now, moving on, a grenade blast has injured at least 8 civilians in the Pulwama district of Indian-occupied Jammu and Kashmir. The injured have been shifted to the hospital for the treatment. The blast occurred at a bus station in Avantipura area of the district. The grenade exploded on road, causing splinter injuries to the civilians. The Indian troops and police have cordoned off the area. In India, protesting farmers have warned of shutting malls and petrol pumps in the Haryana state if the January 4 talks fail. The two sides remain deadlocked at the assurance of the minimum price support and the repeal of 3 farm laws. The farmers' union said if talks fail, they will hold a tractor march on January the 6th towards New Delhi. Farmers said only 5% of their issues have been discussed in the meetings with the government. A former committee slammed the government as the pro-corporate intellectuals discussing the compromise formula. Farmers have also announced multiple protest actions ahead of the Republic Day celebrations. Farmers sit-in on the outskirts of the capital, New Delhi, has now entered second month. Pakistan has rejected the unwarranted assertions by the Indian Ministry of External Affairs over a Hindu temple incident in Karak. The Foreign Office said, having history of state-sponsored discrimination against minorities, India is in no position to pontificate on issue of minority rights. In a statement, spokesperson Zahid Hafiz Chaudhary said New Delhi is trying to feign concerns elsewhere while being the most egregious and persistent violator of minority rights itself. He said India's history is replete with instances of gross violations of the minorities' rights since the demolition of Babri Mosque. Chaudhary said the Indian leadership is yet to condemn the perpetrators of the Delhi massacre in February 2020. In Syria, a car bomb exploded at a vegetable market in the northeastern town of Ras Al Ain, with reports of several killed and wounded. The state media said 2 children were among those killed and their mother was wounded. It says several Turkish-backed fighters were also killed in the explosion. However, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights put the death toll at 5, with 4 others injured. Turkish allied factions seized control of the town in 2019 in an offensive to push back Syrian Kurdish YPG fighters. In Yemen, 5 women have been killed when a projectile exploded at a wedding ceremony on New Year's Day in the Red Sea port city of Hodeidah. The government and Houthi militia blamed each other for the Friday night bombing of the hall near Hodeidah's airport. The UN mission in Yemen has voiced concern over the death of civilians in the attack. It comes just 2 days after at least 26 people were killed in the blasts that rocked the airports of the southern city of Aden. Tens of thousands of people have been killed and millions displaced in Yemen's 6-year war. In Azerbaijan, a civilian has been killed in an explosion caused by an Armenian landmine. Officials said the blast occurred in the Fuzuli province, liberated from the Armenian occupation. In a statement, the chief public prosecutor's office said the civilian succumbed to the wounds as he stepped on a mine. An investigation has been launched into the incident. The public has been warned against entering the liberated areas until the region is cleared of mines. The Azeri Defense Ministry said the violations of Armenian forces have killed and injured numerous Azerbaijani civilians and soldiers. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Palestine, new efforts are underway to resume the multilateral reconciliation dialogue among various Palestinian factions for national unity. Hamas's political bureau's chief Ismail Haniyeh said national unity is the cornerstone of confronting the Zionist occupation. In a statement, he said the reconciliation will counter Israel's intentions to harm Palestinians' rights. He said Hamas is establishing internal and external contacts with Fatah and other parties to turn the dialogue into success. Haniyeh urged all the Palestinian factions to eliminate differences to counter the US and Israeli steps against the Palestinian cause. China says its relationship with the US has reached new crossroads. Foreign Minister Wang Yi said Washington and Beijing's ties can get back on the right track following a period of unprecedented difficulty. In an interview, Wang said the recent U.S. policies have harmed the interests of both the countries and brought huge dangers to the world. He urged the U.S. to respect a social system and development path chosen by China and learn lessons to resolve the conflicts. He said Beijing is aware of some of the American apprehensions about China's rapid growth, but Washington should seize the opportunity to engage in talks. Ties between the world's biggest economies have come under strain amid a series of disputes over trade, human rights, and the origins of COVID-19. U.S. Congress has voted to override President Donald Trump's veto of $740 billion defense policy bill. The override marks the first during Trump presidency. The Republican-controlled Senate voted 81-13 for the National Defense Authorization Act. Earlier, the Democrat-led House also voted overwhelmingly against the veto of the bill. Responding to the vote, President Trump specifically took aim at the issue of liability protection. In a tweet, he said the Senate missed an opportunity to eliminate protections extending unlimited power to big tech firms. He also slammed lawmakers for rejecting his call to increase COVID relief payments to $2,000. The override comes just 2 days before a new U.S. Congress is due to be sworn in. The number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. has crossed 20 million with over 347,000 deaths. Globally, the virus has taken more than 1.8 million lives and infected nearly 84 million people. More in this report.
As the world ushered in 2021, it hoped for leaving the deadliest months of coronavirus pandemic behind. However, right on first day of New Year, many new states set new grim records of COVID-19 cases and deaths. In Latin America, Brazil's death tally has surpassed 195,000, while its infections tally has exceeded 7.7 million. Mexico reported over 11,000 new cases and 700 additional fatalities in a day. In Europe, France registered over 19,000 new infections and 133 deaths over the past 24 hours. In the UK's capital, London, all primary schools are set to close for start of new term after government bowed to legal pressure from local authorities amid surging cases. While Ireland said it underreported its cases by thousands as its system came under strain, suggesting that EU's fastest growing outbreak is worsening even more rapidly than figures showed. Arrival to Turkey from the UK have been temporarily suspended after 15 confirmed cases of the COVID-19 variant were found in the country. The US's top health expert Dr. Anthony Fauci says Washington will not follow London's decision to prioritize giving vaccines first dose to the most high-risk group and allow the second dose to be given up to 12 weeks later. Meanwhile, World Health Organization chief has urged the world to walk the last miles of the pandemic together and help the underprivileged.
Do we ignore the lessons of 2020 and allow insular, partisan approaches, conspiracy theories and attacks on science to prevail, resulting in unnecessary sufferings to people's health and society at large? Or do we walk the last miles of this crisis together, helping each other along the way?
Over in Asia, India has approved AstraZeneca's vaccine for emergency use, paving the way for its rollout in the world's second worst affected country. The Tokyo metropolitan government is set to ask central government to declare a state of emergency following a resurgence of COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, Australia's most populous state of New South Wales has imposed even tighter restrictions as its coronavirus clusters keep expanding.
In Pakistan, 82 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 over the past 24 hours. This takes the country's death toll to over 10,258. The Health Ministry has reported 2,184 new infections overnight. Meanwhile, more than 35,000 active COVID-19 cases have been detected in the country. The ministry says out of over 484,000 countrywide cases, more than 438,000 people have recovered. The ministry said over 216,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province, Punjab has reported nearly 139,000 cases. In the U.S. state of Georgia, over 3 million ballots have already been cast in the runoff race for 2 crucial Senate seats. The election on January the 5th will decide which party controls the 100-member chamber. The turnout figures compiled by the U.S. Elections Project indicate strong voter interest. According to the project, the early votes amount to 38.8% of the total registered voters in the state. Republicans will retain their slim majority in the Senate if they win one or both the seats. If Democrats win both the seats, the Senate will split 50-50, giving Vice President-elect Kamala Harris the tie-breaking vote. The U.S. has added a Cuban bank to its restricted entities list, alleging it has links with the Cuban military. State Department said Banco Financiero International's profits help fund Cuba's interference in Venezuela. In a statement, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the move will prevent Cuban military from benefiting from the financial transactions. The placement of the BFI on the list bars U.S. companies from making direct financial transactions with it. Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez rejected the move as a punitive measure. In a tweet, he said it aimed to tighten Washington's blockade against Cuba. Since taking office, President Donald Trump has rolled back a détente with Cuba pursued by the Obama administration. In the U.S. state of Philadelphia, a group of revelers celebrated New Year's Day in their own traditional way of Mummers Parade despite COVID-19 ban. Local media says the participants marched in South Philadelphia to protest the event's cancellation by the city officials. It has been the first time in decades that the annual parade was cancelled. However, the revelers marched on the streets, calling the parade as protest. The structure of the event was done as a protest to have constitutional protection. Philadelphia's annual Mummers Parade goes back to 120 years. Rescuers have found a body in a search of 10 missing people after a landslide in southern Norway. Talking to media, a spokesperson for the Norwegian Energy Directorate said the landslide has been a quick clay slide. She added, "This is the largest landslide in recent times in Norway." Officials said the Swedish specialist team has been helping the rescue operation, while police said more than 1,000 people have been evacuated from the affected region. It said another 10 people have also been injured in a landslide in the residential area of Gjerdrum municipality. Prime Minister Erna Solberg said her thoughts went out to the victims' family and to those missing ones. The worldwide death toll from the aviation incidents has risen in 2020. A report by a Dutch consulting firm has said the number of crashes fell by more than 50%. Aviation consulting firm 270 said 40 plane crash incidents last year killed 299 people, whereas in 2019, 257 people died in 86 incidents. The decline in the crashes came amid a sharp drop in flights due to the coronavirus pandemic. More than half of the deaths were the 176 people who killed in a Ukrainian plane shot down by Iran in January 2020. The second deadliest incident was the May crash of a Pakistani airliner, killing 98. Aviation had its safest year in 2017 with only 13 deaths in 2 turboprop accidents, but no fatal crashes or passenger deaths. Hundreds of birds have died after New Year's Day celebration in the Italian capital of Rome. The International Organization for the Protection of Animals said it appeared that the incident took place due to loud displays of fireworks. The organization said the birds may have died from fear, heart attack, and hitting windows or electric power lines. The cause of the deaths of the birds has not been determined yet, but animal rights groups have termed it as a massacre. The video of the dead birds has been surfacing on the social media, and people are calling it pure barbarism against animals. In China, crowds bid adieu to the year 2020 that took thousands of lives with it. The festivities come 12 months after the World Health Organization confirmed the Chinese city of Wuhan as the epicenter of COVID-19 outbreak. More in this report.
In China, people get into festive spirits to ring in the year 2021. Large crowds in Wuhan took to the streets to celebrate the arrival of 2021 after a deadly year marked by the pandemic, whereas the south city of Shenzhen arranged a concert to mark the advent of New Year and to add to the celebrations.
Last year in 2020, it's true we suffered a lot, but we've come back since then. I also hope that there won't be anything like that this year, and I hope that everyone across the world is well.
The concert presented an audio-visual feast featuring excellent performances and stunning visual effects for the audience. Titled Sailing in the Greater Bay Area, the concert was staged to revel in the achievements and to bolster prospects in the region after a tough year.
1, 2, 3, 2. I hope that in 2021, I can achieve peace, feel at ease, and do well at many things. And not to forget all about those not so happy memories from 2020.
The COVID-19 epicenter Wuhan has been virus-free for months, and lately the city has started vaccinations. However, a recent spike of cases in various Chinese cities has reminded people that the pandemic is not over yet.
It's time for a short break. We'll be back with more stories. Stay tuned. And now the business updates. Pakistan is vowed to enhance connectivity with Afghanistan and the Central Asian republics. Advisor to Prime Minister on Commerce said the government envisions to make the country a trade and economic hub. In a series of tweets, Abdul Razak Dawood reiterated a safe and consistent trade through the Afghan border. He said the country is ready to leverage its geo-economic location in the region to enhance its international trade. The advisor said the ongoing discussions with the Afghanistan vindicate Pakistan's vision. India's trade deficit has widened over $15 billion in December 2020. The Commerce Ministry said decline resulted due to contraction in petroleum, leather and marine sectors. It said the country's exports declined marginally by 0.8% to $26.89 billion in December 2020. Meanwhile, the imports grew by 7.6% to $42.6 billion. The country's merchandise exports fell by 15.8% as compared to last year. Imports between April and December 2019 to 20 stand above $364 billion. The price of Bitcoin, the world's leading virtual currency, has hit an all-time high, zipping past $30,000. The first decentralized cryptocurrency passed the benchmark after breaking $20,000 on 16th of December last year. The currency gained almost 6% to reach nearly $31,000. The latest gains top a rally for the controversial digital asset in 2020, which rebounded sharply after a severe crash in March. In cricket, Pakistan's national team captain Babar Azam has been ruled out of the second and the final test against New Zealand. The match is starting tomorrow in Christchurch. Pakistan Cricket Board says the cricketer has failed to recover from a right thumb fracture. In his absence, Mohammad Rizwan will lead the side. The green shirts are already missing opener Imamul Haq. The Pakistani side is determined to make a strong comeback after suffering defeat in the first by 101 runs. New Zealand is currently leading the two-match series 1-0. With 7 straight Test series wins, the Kiwis are aiming top spot in the world Test rankings by securing a win in the second Test. The Pakistan cricket team have visited the families of the victims of the Christchurch mosque attack ahead of the second Test against New Zealand. In a video shared by Pakistan Cricket Board, the cricketers can be seen interacting with the families and spending time with them. Talking to the families of the victims, batting coach Yunus Khan said his team members are with them in their grief. More than 50 worshippers were martyred in a mass shooting at 2 separate mosques in Christchurch in March 2019. The killer was later sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The England cricket team will arrive in Sri Lanka tomorrow to resume a pandemic-hit test series. The series was scheduled to take place in March last year, but was postponed due to COVID-19 pandemic. England captain Joe Root is confident any positive cases in the squad will not force the cancellation of their tour. But he cautioned that his side will have to keep a close watch on their physical and mental well-being. He said the team will be traveling with a psychologist to help them cope with the challenges posed by playing during a pandemic. England will undergo quarantine for 10 days in a biosecure bubble and be subjected to frequent testing. In the English Premier League, Tottenham Hotspur thrashed Leeds United 3-0 at home as they returned to winning ways. With this victory, Spurs have climbed to the 3rd spot with 29 points from 16 matches. Harry Kane and Son Heung-min netted first half goals to make the scoreline 2-0 in favour of Spurs at the interval. Toby Alderweireld then scored in the 50th minute to seal the things for the home side. Meanwhile, Fulham's match against Burnley on Sunday has been postponed after more positive coronavirus cases at West London club. And now the weather situation from around the world. And that's all for now. With the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.